Okay. Well, I know it's a few minutes before 7, but why don't we go ahead and we can start our round of introductions. That way we can give way to Thomas and Karen and Christine as close to 7 as possible so that they can time themselves and everything, since this is sort of a practice session for their conference here later in the month. I guess I'll start, and then I'll just go by the way you guys appear on my grid, rather than just so everybody knows who's jumping in. Again, I'm Todd with Cross IT. I've been using FileMaker since version 6, which is 19 years ago now. And pumpkin spice stuff, for me, you can't beat pumpkin pie. However, I did recently discover that Turner's Dairy actually has pumpkin pie milk that you can get. And it is pretty much like drinking pumpkin pie filling. And I thought that was pretty awesome too. So, all right. So I guess, Brad, if you want to go next there.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. I'm Brad Dybert. This is my second time to FMburgh. I don't know why I didn't find you before. I've lived in Pittsburgh 21 years, so I should have found it. I'm currently unemployed, although I've been around FileMaker for 25 years. So anyone has a job lead, let me know. And I think pumpkin bread is probably my favorite pumpkin thing.
Very good. All right, Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I work for a company called Equa Parts. We sell commercial plumbing and heating and things like that. So I'm an in-house developer. IT is actually my main job, IT and accounting, but I do FileMaker on the side, and which has become more of a full-time job. Oh, I just wanted to say we did upgrade to FileMaker 18, 19. We went live on Monday. Yay! So, so we, and pumpkin spice, I probably like a nice pumpkin roll, you know, with the cheesecake filling type, or the cheese, yeah, cream cheese filling. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. And did I say it? Did I answer everything? I think so.
Yep, you got it.
All right, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, Karen.
Hi, thank you for having us here tonight. My name's Karen Pater. I know absolutely nothing or very little about the back end of FileMaker, but I am an end user and I have used it for many years now at the School of Pharmacy. I would have to probably agree with Kim and Brad. My favorite pumpkin flavored things are either a pumpkin bread or a pumpkin roll of some sort with the cream cheese filling.
Okay, John.
Good evening. My name is John Hammer. I'm actually a finance guy who used to program many years ago when IBM PCs first came out. Probably started using FileMaker, I don't know, version 2 or 3 or 4, something like that. I've pretty much just been developing for my own use. I guess I could be considered semi-pro. I had a couple clients that needed to put something online quick. And so I think I whipped something up in version 8 or 12, something like that, and we put it online. As far as pumpkin spice goes, as long as there's real pumpkin in it, it's fine. This other stuff I'm not so sure about.
Very good. All right, Bill.
I'm Bill Barnes. I work for St. Vincent College. I've been with FileMaker, I don't know, if you said it was 19 years for 6, I'm probably a little bit longer than that then. I think I was back on like 4.5 or 5 when I started working with FileMaker. And I honestly didn't think that there was anything else besides a latte that goes with pumpkin spice, so.
All right, fair enough. All right, ThomasWaters.
Hi, I'm ThomasWaters. I'm retired. I'm so happy to be able to say that. I've been working with FileMaker for about 25 years or so. And beginning next week, I'll be working on a very part-time basis for the School of Pharmacy, continuing to do some FileMaker development and allowing projects that we've been using for so long to continue and to keep evolving. And I love pumpkin pie. I'm not a pumpkin latte or pumpkin anything else kind of person, but pumpkin pie any day, 365. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Christine.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having us. So I'm Kristina Schonder. I'm one of the faculty at Pitt School of Pharmacy. And like Karen, I know nothing about FileMaker, but I've gotten a great appreciation from it from Thomas. And I'm one of the folks that just funnels ideas to him and says, Tom, just make this happen for us. And he's done a fantastic job with that. So as far as pumpkin spice, I love pumpkin spice anything. My favorite is my pumpkin spice tea that I have right here. It's like fall in a cup, but I'm also very partial to pumpkin ice cream too.
Hey, Beth.
Okay. Hi, I'm Beth Latta from IT Solutions, and I've been building stuff with FileMaker for 30 years, and pumpkin ew.
Okay, and that is an acceptable answer. So. All right, Paul.
My name's Paul Sprague. I'm a corporate developer for a big printing company based in Wisconsin. I'm in Connecticut. Our corporate headquarters is Wisconsin. It's Quad Graphics. I also work nights and weekends for my my family's copy shop. And I wrote my first FileMaker system. It was an invoicing system, and I wrote it in 1988. So that would have been 32 years ago. And in pumpkin terms, I'm going to have to go with the jack-o'-lantern when you just put the candle in there and you get that little whiff of you know what I'm talking about, right?
Okay. All right, very good. All right, Rob.
My name's Rob Weaver. I work at Duquesne University in the School of Education. Been working professionally with FileMaker for 10 so years. But I dabbled in it when I was in college and stuff. And the student newspaper had it, so that was where I first started learning it. So that would have been back in, early 90s. And as far as pumpkin's concerned, yeah, I really don't like. I like pumpkin pie, but only if it's made with Libby's pumpkin. I don't like real pumpkin pie. So, but everything else, I don't partake in any other pumpkin spice stuff.
All righty. All right, the mock whiz.
Hello, so I am Theresa Makwa, and I work with Thomas here at Profile Developers. I have been working with FileMaker since 2007, something like that, like 8.5 is where I kind of came in on the game. And pumpkin stuff, it's got to be pumpkin pie, it's got to be cold with whipped topping, and maybe sometimes a little bit of like a pumpkin cheesecake with a little bit of the cheesecake layer in there. So.
Thomas Makwa. I've been working with FileMaker since I was in my 20s, so more than 5 years now. And pumpkin beers. I like pumpkin beer. I'll try almost anything, whether it's poppy or spicy or dark or light, or as long as it's got pumpkin in it, I'll try it.
Sounds good. Okay, Dennis.
I'm Dennis from Philadelphia. I think I started out with version 1 because I started out with HyperCard, then I went to Panorama, and then I think I started with FileMaker. Pretty much I was basically self-taught and kind of didn't know what I didn't know and just kind of continued on. I've been really getting into FileMaker probably the last 8 years. Been writing all sorts of different solutions for different people. Currently right now I'm a firefighter and I work for a dive rescue team, and I'm writing both of them different databases. So. Oh, and pumpkin spice. I do enjoy a Red Bull pumpkin spice every once in a while.
Oh, very good. All right, Laura.
Hi, Laura from Cross IT. I've been a FileMaker developer for around over 10 years. And I imagine that I probably would like pumpkin spice because it doesn't actually have pumpkin in it, but anything that generally has pumpkin spice, I probably won't eat, or drink. So I don't know.
You'll have to leave now.
Yeah.
Okay, Jill.
Yeah, I'm Jill. I think I've been working with FileMaker, it might be up to 7 or 8 years. I know I've been working with it basically as long as this group has been in existence, because I came to the first meeting for this group shortly after I started. I too am blissfully retired. I'm sort of a traditionalist on many things, including pumpkin spice. My grandmother's recipe for pumpkin pie with homemade pie crust, where you chop up butter and flour and then roll it out, which makes flakes of flour between the flakes of butter and makes that wonderful flaky pie crust. And some whipped cream on top. You got to have a lot of calories. That's what makes it taste really good.
I'm suddenly very hungry.
Yep, it does. It has that effect on you. You start to smell it and then you're really hungry.
All right, Mr. Mueller.
Good evening. I'm sorry I'm late. I was out getting pumpkin spice. Matter of fact, I just finished my dessert, which was pumpkin spice donut holes.
Were they good?
Oh, they were wonderful. They were really, really good.
Pumpkin pie.
I have to say, I have been doing FileMaker for a long while. I'm a retired school superintendent, and I used to write them for the school district as well. And then I volunteer now with a number of organizations, and I write solutions for them. At medics, dive team, first responders, and food pantries. Those are my biggies that I have right now. Anyhow, hearing everybody's things about pumpkin spice, I just have to say everything that you mentioned, I love. I mean, you're making my mouth water.
All right, sounds
Thank you, though.
Yep. Yeah, good evening, Cheryl. I don't know if you're able to, if you want to chime in, but we were just doing our introductions, who you are, where you work, how long you've been using FileMaker, and what do you, your favorite pumpkin spice flavored thing.
Sure. So I'm Cheryl Sorensen. I work in the School of Pharmacy at the University of Pittsburgh. So I've been here for about 3.5 years now, and I do not like pumpkin anything.
Okay, and that is an acceptable answer.
Good to see you all.
All right, very good. All right, well, again, welcome everyone. I guess we've made our round of introductions, so we'll just go ahead and dive right in to the presentation that Thomas, Karen, and Christine have for us tonight. So go ahead and take it away.
I'm gonna turn this over to my colleagues to get started. I'm gonna run the slides. They're gonna do some talking, and I'll pick up somewhere a little farther down the slide deck.
Thank you, Tom. You can go ahead and advance to the objective slide. In full disclosure, before we start the timer, there are 4 dogs in my house right now, and 2 of them are upstairs howling. So I had to keep getting up and asking them to be quiet. So if you can hear them, I'm just gonna let them do their thing in the background and hope that they don't cause too much ruckus. And now we can start our timer at 7:11, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing us to be here this evening. My name is Karen Pater, and along with my colleagues Kristina Schonder and ThomasWaters from the University of Pittsburgh School of Pharmacy Professional Development Team, we are pleased to be able to present to you today. Our objectives for this talk are to compare technologies that can be used to track student activities, describe the evolution of a web app to track student engagement in co-curricular activities, and to discuss the application of co-curriculum tracking embedded into a professional development program. Next slide. As a bit of background, at Pitt Pharmacy, we have a long-standing tradition of student professional development where we strive to offer personalized learning experiences for our students while meeting accreditation standards as outlined by our accrediting body. As you might suspect, there is a lot of time devoted to our approach to patient care, as seen in Standard 3 on the slide. But in particular, as educators, we have a commitment to our students to provide them the knowledge while they have to practice the skills, behaviors, and attitudes necessary to demonstrate self-awareness, leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, and professionalism. All things, of course, that are readily able to be taught in the didactic curriculum, but not so readily available to test in a standardized fashion. Next slide. To support our students' professional development, the standards for our accrediting body include endorse inclusion of co-curricular activities which complement and advance the learning that occurs within the classroom and experiential learning. Our co-curriculum program has been developed as a structured program to enhance student development of these skills that are vital for professional readiness. The term co-curriculum refers to learning activities and experience that facilitate student achievement of specific stated skills. And the following slides will represent that. I'm going to pass now to Kris to talk a little bit about those skill sets.
Thanks, Karen. So on our next slide here, we so within the co-curriculum, we have 10 skills that we track that students are expected to achieve across the course of their stay at Pitt Pharmacy in the curriculum. And these are the 10 skills that come out of those standards from the accreditation body that Karen went over in the previous slide. Go ahead to the next slide. So along with the co-curricular outcomes, our students are also expected to achieve the Pitt Pharmacy curriculum outcomes. And these 11 curricular outcomes are part of what makes the framework of the curriculum that the students progress through. And so the students must demonstrate how they achieve these 11 curricular outcomes. Go ahead to the next slide. So prior to the 2016 standards that Karen mentioned, that require the co-curricular skills, we've had a long-standing tradition also of tracking student progression towards those curricular outcomes through our electronic portfolio. And students are able to track the qualitative evidence that supports how they're achieving those curricular outcomes. But there's some limitations with the electronic portfolio platform that we are currently using. It's built in a Moodle platform, so that makes it very difficult for us to be able to run reports and pull quantitative numbers along with some of that information to see where students are within those curricular outcomes. Next slide. But with the curricular outcomes that are being tracked in the electronic portfolio in the qualitative form, many of these map to those co-curricular skills that we saw in the previous slide. And so we know that there's qualitative evidence available to us in that electronic portfolio platform that we can kind of pull from, at least for the students' achievement of that qualitative evidence for the co-curricular skills. Go ahead to the next slide. So the missing piece in all of this puzzle for us in the co-curriculum is that we need to track the quantitative evidence. So we need to be able to have the numbers that support how the students are achieving those co-curricular skills. And so this is where Primerx enters in as a professional development resource that was actually developed by students in the School of Pharmacy in 2018. as a way to track engagement in professional organizations. So Thomas was brought into the discussion with the students due to his expertise in web development when the students had the idea of trying to utilize a badge reader for activities to allow for tracking of attendance. So I'll transition over to Tom then to provide some further insights on the discussion that occurred that led us to the logical use of FileMaker to assist with this.
Thanks, Christine and Karen. So as it often happens in the School of Pharmacy, when students want to do something, they will have done some preliminary work and have some ideas, and then usually well after something should have been said, they'll say, oh, by the way, could you do this so we have it for next week? And that was the case with this. Another unit at the university was using an ID card reader as a way to track attendance. And I was asked, could we get something set up for a meeting that's happening next week? And as I looked into it, there was not a way for us to go ahead and utilize it. And fortunately, as all of you know, the Assessment Institute will be less knowledgeable, but you all know we've been using FileMaker for a long time. And so I was able to take the ideas that the students wanted to bring into being and couple that with ideas about continuing education and lifelong learning to produce a database, a FileMaker database, so that we could do what the students needed to be done. So I want to start by kind of laying out a little bit of a framework for you. What we're talking about is that the students needed an app. And apps are a really trendy thing to be talking about right now. But there are really kind of three different kinds of apps that we need to mention. Apps can be computer apps that live on a desktop, that live on a mobile device, or that live out in the web somewhere. Now, I want to say something about forms because we are all very used to using data, and there are ways in which we may put data into a computer via a form, but that really isn't an app. It's just one piece of a whole puzzle, because what's more important is how we can then interact with that data and how we can use that data to do a wide variety of things. And so we need apps to both work with the data going in, but then to do things with it. One of those types of apps, however, are web apps. And I really want to give a shout out for web apps. Web apps are apps that use a web interface and work on the web in the HTTPS area, which is port 443. And I'm saying that now, and I'll say a little bit more about that a little bit later on. So the question becomes, how do you develop the right kind of app? And so here are a few things that are important to be considered when you're thinking about developing an app. The first is cost. One of the problems with developing a more traditional app is that it can be very expensive, and apps are generally tied to the platform on which they're used. For example, I use Photoshop on my desktop, but I can't use it on my phone. I can now use it on my iPad, but it isn't quite the same. And so there's really two different apps there. There's the app I use on the computer and the app I use on my iPad, and no app for my phone. Likewise, an app that's developed for mobile devices may run on an iPhone, but then it won't run on an Android phone. Or it could be created for an Android phone, but it won't run on an iPhone. Or then it has to be programmed to run on both. So apps can be very costly. And one way to develop less costly is to develop a web app. Functionality is the next big piece to consider. Because apps are the trendy thing, everybody will, for not very much money, they say, make you an app. But oftentimes what they're really doing is taking something like a website and turning it into an app that displays a few things, but that's about it. And usually for the right app, you need a lot more functionality than that. So be very clear about all your functionality before you decide what you're going to build. most important, I believe, is the flexibility and adaptability. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that as we go a little bit further along. But one of the problems with app development is that you're doing lots of back-end coding, and therefore it will do exactly what you've set it up to do, but it might not do anything else. And so you need to be really clear about what you need out of your app before you get started. And the last point that is really important in developing the right app is to think about access. Who's going to be accessing the data source? How are they going to be accessing it? Do they have an internet capability? Are they out in the field somewhere where there is no capability? All of those kinds of access questions have to be addressed. So we decided, and partly because I decided, that we were going to use Claris FileMaker to develop our app and our web app. And Claris also has another product called Claris Connect, which is really important to consider when we're thinking about apps. However, we have not used any Connect functionality in what we're about to show you today up until this point. We chose Claris FileMaker because it's a workplace innovation platform. It enables the easy creation of apps and web apps, and it can do that going anywhere from a no-code environment to a complex code environment. And that's very, very important because a person with very few skills whatsoever can spend a little bit of time with FileMaker, and within a few hours, perhaps within a few days, have a working app that can meet many needs. And then by not doing any coding whatsoever, just by using the built-in tools that are available with FileMaker. However, to get the full functionality, it's helpful to have some coding experience, and FileMaker allows you to use as little or as much of that as you want. FileMaker has easy integration with enterprise-level tools. And in a higher education setting, that becomes critically important because there are so many enterprise-level applications and platforms available. And so whatever you build will do best if it can talk to them and work with them. Lastly, FileMaker is cloud-based, and so it provides for a very secure access from anywhere. There are other ways to build apps, but I think as we show you what we've done, I think it will make a case that FileMaker provides a really robust and effective tool for building web apps and apps. So in our Primerx system, there are 3 different pathways to document the activities done by our students. And they're displayed here, and we'll talk about each of the 3 in a little bit more detail as we go along. There are Primerx sponsored events, and those are student organization events that have requested that title of being Primerx sponsored. And so the faculty administrators, Kris and Karen, have to approve them. There are pre-approved, or what we call catalog events. And these are events that are often in the didactic training, but could be outside the classroom or could be experiential learning that faculty have determined meet the co-curricular requirements. And so they're kind of pre-approved. A student can select them out of the catalog and have them go right onto their Primerx list. And then students can self-submit or student-selected activities. So a student may do some activity someplace within their training and think this meets a co-curricular requirement, and so they submit it, and then it is either approved or declined. So the structure of our Primerx is really pretty simple. There are opportunities that exist. They may be catalog events or Primerx sponsored activities. Students make submissions of either those or self-submitted things. Those get approved, and once approved, then the student can pull a report that shows what they've done. And this may look pretty simple, but the reality is behind that, there's about 20 tables worth of data, almost 550 fields across those tables, about 25 relationships, 20 custom functions, and a host of other geeky things. So let's take a look at the structure from the standpoint of users. We have 4 different kinds of users that use our system. We have students who are using Primerx to track their co-curricular activities, and they're kind of our main constituency. We have some student administrators, and they play a special role in working with student organizations. Their access or the way they interact with Primerx is very much the way students do, except that they're putting in student organization activities instead of students' self-activities. We have a group called faculty administrators. They're both on the call today, Karen and Kris, and they manage everything at the top end of this. And then we have a group of faculty that we refer to as the professional development advisors. And they interact with the students throughout the students' 3 years of training to help students develop and become professionals in the field of pharmacy. Now, the student experience, students interact with Primerx in 4 different and very important ways. The first is the easiest for them, which is there are these Primerx sponsored activities. The student organizations have an activity that meets a co-curricular requirement. They are provided a QR code or a URL, and when the students go to the activity, at the end of it, they're shown that QR code. They use their phone, point it at the QR code, and it captures them and goes right into their Primerx list of activities. When I talked about the importance of flexibility, this is a pretty good case because with COVID-19, our student organizations are not having in-person events right now. So all of their events have gone remote, gone online. And so what can be done in a Zoom meeting is at the end of the meeting, the students then go into the chat window, they put a URL, the student clicks on the URL, and it does the same thing as it would do if they followed that QR code. So a web app gave us the flexibility so that the student could interact with the database, whether they were on their computer, on their phone, iPad, or other device. The students use our Primerx database to search the catalog for events, and I'll show you what that interface looks like in just a minute. By going through the catalog, they can search it for 3 different criteria. 2 are functional right now, and the 3rd we're bringing into being. They can either search by where the learning exists. Is it outside the classroom? Is it didactic in the classroom? Or is it part of experiential learning? Or they can search by the co-curricular outcomes. Is it about education? Is it about professionalism? And you showed you those list of those earlier. The 3rd way that we have not yet brought into being is more of a keyword or an activity search. And to have a robust search in that kind of system, all of our activities need really robust descriptions. And we're in the process of adding those to our database now. And this is another way in which FileMaker has really given us a lot of advantages, because as we have learned how students interact with this, we've been able to make changes to our original plan so that we can have a tool that better meets the students' needs. Lastly, or in terms of how students submit, is students put in self-submitted requests. So a student, not every student does all the same things. Students can have activities that they participate in that they think meet the co-curricular requirements, and they could submit that for approval. And then all of our students pull reports. They're required to pull a report at least once a semester to put inside their portfolio. And they also use the reports as they work with their advisors. So in the catalog search, I mentioned that they could search by 2 criteria, by either where the learning occurs or by the co-curricular skill. Or they could also just push a search button and get a list of everything. But as you can see on the left side of this screen, the student did a search for innovation and entrepreneurship, and they found 10 activities that are in the catalog. And one of those is called BFL, Justification of Investment Portfolio Presentations. This is an activity done by one of our student organizations, and you can see where the learning occurs, what's the skill attached to it, and there is a brief description of it and the organization that is responsible for this activity. In a self-generated or self-submitted activity, it would be similar, and they would get to a page that looks like this, where then they would have to decide what evidence they're putting into their portfolio. Oh, I got ahead of myself. Evidence they're putting into their portfolio, and we ask them, is the evidence been added to your portfolio, yes or no? And this question happens because at the back end, if they say no, the database sends them an email saying, please remember to put this in your portfolio. That simply saying it's there isn't good enough, but we really need it to be inside. And then they're asked to put a justification about why they feel this activity meets the requirements for the associated learning outcome. And then there is a simple metric scale about how valuable they felt this experience was for them, and they can submit it. So this is what the student report looks like. They can pull a report at any time during the semester. And this is part of the first page of the report. And so it will list anywhere from 0 to however many activities they've accomplished, the date of it, whatever the name of it is, where it came from, and what's the evidence that they used for it, and then whether it is in the portfolio or not. And as you can see, some of these are tagged with a light red color, a pink color, and that's because we want the student to be reminded that simply listing it may not be enough, that it's important for their professional development for it to go further than that. So if the evidence is marked as other, that's tagged red, so they know that that's something they're going to have to talk to their advisor about. Likewise, if they said no to it being in the portfolio, that too would be tagged that reddish color, because we want as the student to be reminded and then go back and make sure that their portfolio is complete. The second page of the report gives numbers that are for the whole year. At the top of this, you see that. And then for their entire in-classroom time during pharmacy school. We have our students for 4 years. In their 4th year, they're out doing rotations. So we track during their 3 years that they have classroom studies. So this student pulled this report, and you can see that they had 5 activities for their P1 fall semester, 6 activities for their P1 spring semester, and already 1 activity for their P2 fall, which they're in right now. The student administrator experience looks in the database and very much like what you just saw, but they have a different set of requirements. We have 2 student administrators per class year. They coordinate with the student organizations. They submit those into Primerx for approval, and then they take the QR codes and the links that are provided and they give them to the student organizations. So they're kind of the liaisons with the student organizations. Our faculty advisors, which we call our professional development advisors, can interact with the system in a variety of ways. And so they kind of do the majority of the work. I do the majority of the back end stuff, and they do the majority of the front end stuff. They maintain the catalog, so they go over it and make sure that what's in it is adequate. Are there new things that should be added? Are there things that should be taken out? They approve all of the submissions that come from students as well as faculty. They manage the groups. Our students are put in groups, and each group has 2 advisors. So they manage who are advising and who's in the groups. And then they manage the professional advisors. So here's one of the windows that our administrators would see. This is their screen for approving submissions. And when this screen grab was generated, there were 10 submissions in the system for student submitted activities, and we see them on the left side of the screen. I can also tell that there's one Primerx pending record, and there's 4 student submitted records that are sitting there because the faculty advisors requested more information from the students. And so the administrators can look at any of these, and then they can make a decision whether to approve it, decline it, or to request discussion. They also can add a note to it. So if they want to request discussion, they can click the add a note button. They get a card window where they enter the note. Then that sends an email to the student, and then the student is expected to respond. And we did it this way because that way all the documentation around and dialogue around a submission is in the database and it's all together. And because we have 2 administrators, each one would need to know what the other one did or didn't say or do or whatever. So it just keeps all the communication in a centralized place. Now the actual advisors themselves interact with Primerx in 2 big ways, or they interact with it in one big way that helps do the other. The advisor can go in and see all of their students. They can email the students, but they can also pull a report for a student at any point. So our advisors meet with the students at least once a semester, sometimes more often. And before they meet with the students, they may go in and bring up their list of students, print the reports for all their students, and then they have some information to go into that meeting with. And the window you're seeing now is the window for a faculty advisor. Kris Schonder is one of our administrators, is also an advisor. She advises group number 19. You can see on the right side of this, well, not all of them, they don't all fit here, but most of the students are showing, and they're color coded by the year that they're in. So the P1 students are at the top, the P2 students are green in the center, and the P3 students are yellow towards the bottom. And as you can see, student 1, his name is Joe, Kris can email the student or print the report. There are a few other things that a faculty member can do. They can search the catalog so that they can have some information to utilize when they advise the students. They could submit materials for the catalog, and then they can keep track of what they submitted. And that 4th button, that administrative button, that only shows up for the 2 faculty who are actually administrators, which are Kris and Karen. And because they do much more advising than I do, I'm going to turn this back over now to Kris to move on.
Okay, so as Tom mentioned, then as a faculty advisor, we would get a report from the students, and you can show the next slide. So this is that report that Tom had showed earlier. So as an advisor, what I would be doing is kind of looking through this to see, have they met all of the curricular advising requirements that we have for them, in the number that they're supposed to log for and track for each semester, what is the evidence, and then we can address some of those pink highlighted pieces of evidence to make sure that they have the appropriate qualitative evidence to attach to their portfolio. And then whenever we review that second page of the report, again, we're kind of tracking to see if the student's on track for what they're meeting the co-curricular requirements. So one of our requirements is to log 5 activities in each semester. And so this is a student who did meet those activities. And then we'd be counting the numbers to make sure that they have the right numbers for that. So in the next slide, you'll see just a picture of us meeting with our student advisees. And so in these groups, that's whenever we have the opportunity to discuss this with the students, to say, okay, you're on track with what you need to do. Let's think of some other opportunities that we might be able to fill in some of the gaps for others that within that group. And then Karen can show us some of the data then that came out of our first pilot semester of the program.
Thank you, Kris. So in conclusion, we wanted to share with you some data from the use of the Primerx web app for our initial term and the use from fall of 2019, for our first year class. In all, 7 of the 10 co-curricular skills that we mentioned are tracked through the app. And this slide demonstrates the total number of events that were publicized throughout the term, followed by the total number of submissions through the app for the 116 students in this class. So there were a total of 627 submissions, and we feel that this demonstrates student acceptance to the Primerx web app as a tool to assist in their professional development. Go ahead, Tom, and advance to the next slide. Oops, sorry. And so to put this into perspective for you, our requirements, as Kris mentioned, for submission are 5 activities per term. And this slide shows our inaugural benchmark data demonstrating 81% of our students met this requirement, with the number of submissions ranging from 1 to more than 10 submissions for some students. So in conclusion, we have been very pleased with the use of FileMaker at the University of Pittsburgh School of Pharmacy as an innovation in higher education. And at this time, we would like to take any questions that you might have.
Just a comment from me. That's very well done. I wish you a lot of success with it. Tom, all the work that you did on the back end of that, and then how you, as a school administrator, I appreciate how you've tied all the goals and objectives for all the students together and how you're monitoring them. I don't know whether that'll ever get down into the public school in certain areas, but it does present an outline or a pathway for school systems to start taking a look for certain groups of students. And I would hope that you sometime can get to the point of where you can demonstrate this to school administrators. I think it would be very beneficial, very, very beneficial. But well done.
Thanks, Paul.
I'm going to echo some of those comments. Not only is that well done in terms of the actual FileMaker coding in the presentation, but working in higher education, I know what you went through to get all those different constituencies on the same page and you know, in there. And so kudos to you guys on developing a really good product like that. So
what's the next step?
Well, the first next step is our presentation. We were invited to do a presentation about this at the IUP Assessment Institute, which is at the end of the month. And I mentioned that at the last FMburgh meeting. And so Todd thought it would be great if we were given an opportunity to do this tonight as a practice run. And we do. We really appreciate the opportunity so we could see how well we fit in our time lot and what we need to cut or expand. And so the 3 of us were very pleased to have this opportunity to go ahead and make this presentation to an audience that we knew would be very open to it and appreciate it. I think from a FileMaker perspective too, since this is a FileMaker group, some of the next changes to this are, well, one of them is more work to take me out of the picture. So any of you that are in-house developers know, you know, you do things sometimes quickly because you have to get it done and so somebody can use it, but you're constantly interacting with the database and, you know, there may be some bugs, but you kind of work around them and so you remain involved. Well, now that I'm retired, I need to be a little less involved. And so over the next 6 months, one of my main things that I'm going to be doing is really making me less necessary so that the administrators everything can happen without any involvement from me, but also creating a real roadmap for how this can continue to grow and evolve. And I mentioned Claris Connect in the beginning. As all of you probably know, Connect provides ways to connect FileMaker or a variety of things to other things using the REST API in a very easy way. And we showed you the ePortfolio, which is currently built in Moodle. Moodle has a REST API. Our Primerx app could talk to Moodle. And so we could have a better, tighter integration between the quantitative piece here and the qualitative piece, which is in the ePortfolio.
What version of FileMaker are you using for as the server?
19.
Okay.
We have always tried to stay up to date with our FileMaker server version, and when 19 came out earlier this year, I made a major change, a major decision to scrap our servers and start a whole brand new server. As many of you know, in the older days, the long ago days of not so long ago, when you used FileMaker for the web and using WebDirect, they wanted you to have a two-box setup where one was the web publishing engine and one was the database server. And FileMaker has changed a lot over time, where now they kind of want you to have a single box setup that's doing everything. And I felt that we were actually hurting our usage by maintaining that two-box setup with the worker box being in the DMZ and the server box being in a server zone. And so for FileMaker 19, we spun up a whole new server and put 19 on a server all by itself with a number of changes to our configuration. And that's really been working out well for us over the past month.
Tom, I have a question as far as how many concurrent hits on the server do you anticipate? Like how many students are you serving? How many licenses do you have to allow for it? And have you ever had problems where too many people are trying to hit it at the same time?
That's such a great question. And yes, it's an issue for us. So as those of you that are in higher education know, and those of you that aren't in higher education may have all the same financial constraints, you know, money is tight. And in the oldest days of FileMaker, the web server was a separate application. And so we had a license that gave us that, as well as FileMaker Server, as well as a number of seats of FileMaker client. Well, you know, in the new pricing, it isn't like that anymore. And when that it was called FileMaker Server Advanced, I think at one point. And when that went away, we were given in exchange 25 concurrencies. And so we have 26 concurrencies, and then we have a number of seats for FileMaker client is what we have. And actually, in our last purchase, I went from 25 seats down to 5 because for us, having everyone interact through WebDirect, or almost everybody interact through WebDirect, makes much more sense than having some people using FileMaker Client and students using WebDirect and faculty using WebDirect. So we have 26 concurrencies right now. And we have about 480 students. We have about 120 faculty. We have about 25 or 30 staff. And all of these people are interacting with our server at some time or another. It's never a problem, except because of Primerx, when there's a student organization activity, they get to the end of their presentation and it's 5 minutes before the time is over and they put up that QR code. And of course, every student is trying to hit it at the exact same time. And that is a problem with only 26 concurrencies. So what's happened for us has been, we have tried to educate our students that if when they try to connect, if they get a message that says that there's too many users, to wait 5 minutes and try again. And that isn't an ideal solution. The more ideal solution is to have a concurrency for every single student and faculty member, but that really isn't cost effective for us. What has happened though is the code, I stripped it down as well as I could. It takes about 4 seconds for the student authentication from the QR code, from start to finish. And so in the last student organization event, which was last week, we had 80 student authentications go through in the first 2 minutes. So and there was about 118 students total. And they have a whole hour after the event to actually do their authentication. And so when we're getting almost the entire group of students through in the first 2 or 3 minutes, I think we're doing okay. So it hasn't really, it hasn't turned into a huge problem. The right solution, of course, is to buy more concurrencies, and that would become less of a problem. So yeah, if we had the money, if I could easily just ask for something, I would ask to increase our concurrencies to about 50. And then I think that we wouldn't see any real issue at all. But yeah, I hope I answered your questions satisfactorily.
Yeah, thank you. So when they hit that QR code, they're actually logging into their account, writing something to their record, and then logging back out. Like it's all done scripted automatically.
Yeah, the QR code is, as you know, with WebDirect, you can call a script. And so the URL that they're following, either via the QR code or that gets pasted into the chat window, just is a WebDirect call that calls a script. And that script requires the student to authenticate, put in their username and password. And after that, they don't have to do anything. It takes that data and it has the ID of the event, and it goes ahead and writes the authentication record. There is a part that happens after the fact. There's a little bit of extra data that, because one possibility is that it has to first find that opportunity record and get some data about like the name of the event, the time it started, the time it ends, all of that. But that slows down the authentication by a few seconds. So what we have done is just allow, after there is an event that evening, I have a script that runs that just
yes, I will be
pulls
very
the rest
careful.
of that
I
data
can even,
together.
yeah, I can even turn it off.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Any more questions?
No, just one more comment, Tom. Again, thank you all for your presentation. That's a lot of work in that. Have you, please keep in the back of your mind public education too, okay? Because conceptually what you're doing is applicable in many aspects to the public education arena. And if you were to present conceptually what you've done here through the intermediate units, okay, like the Allegheny Intermediate Unit for one or Westmoreland, to hit or to show superintendents, curriculum directors, people who are involved with monitoring student progress in whatever term they use for that person, I think would be very, very beneficial and would be very appreciated by the staffs at the school level too. So don't forget public education too. And I come from public ed, I don't come from higher ed. So I have to keep sticking what I see here and promoting it down into the lower ones. Because if they get used to it down in the public sector, public education sector, it's gonna make it much easier as they go into college and do those types of things there. So again, my sincere thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up all that time.
Oh, you did? No, that's great, Paul. Thanks. Well, I think one of the things I wanted to do to wrap all this up was just say a little bit, and other in-house developers, I really hope you chime in with your thoughts about some of this. In my experience of COVID-19, FileMaker has kind of made a huge difference in our ability as a school to do what we do. So, and I've been really grateful for the way COVID-19 has allowed my work to really rise to the top within the School of Pharmacy and be seen. I always had a dean that was supportive of what we were doing with FileMaker, but until COVID-19, I never had a dean that truly kind of got on a soapbox for what we were doing around curricular development and curricular management. And COVID-19 is the best thing that ever happened to us in terms of FileMaker and the cost of using FileMaker. As many of you might know, the University of Pittsburgh, like every higher ed institution, like every school system, had to decide what to do with bringing students back, being remote, being a hybrid, somewhere in between. And our faculty spent a summer of having to kind of concoct at least 4 different ways that they might teach their fall classes, whether it was all in person, whether it was all remote, whether it was somewhere in between, and where in between it was, what that meant. And you know, because I presented at a previous meeting, I developed a database that we call our curriculum database, and it holds all of the data for all of the course sessions for all of the courses taught within the School of Pharmacy. And the use of that database gave the School of Pharmacy the advantage where we could very quickly and easily adapt and allow our faculty to bring together their schedule, compare schedules with other courses. And if we had not done it in FileMaker, I don't know that our faculty would have been ready for fall. And you know, we share a building with this with the School of Dental Medicine, and we were several weeks before the start of classes, and our faculty knew what they were doing. They knew where they were teaching and when they were teaching and how they were going to be teaching and how they were going to be providing information to their students because of what we had done with FileMaker. Where Dental Med, we're still trying to figure all of that stuff out. And FileMaker and what we had done in FileMaker made all of that possible. So I was, you know, I mentioned to Todd I'd like to talk a little bit about COVID and FileMaker, and I'm wondering how other in-house developers and other developers found FileMaker in the very short time we probably have left.
As an in-house developer, I can tell you that COVID has been the best thing for me. I hate to say that, but I've been working from home since March, and we have, because we have FileMaker, and as I said, a few of you heard in the beginning, that we just went live with FileMaker 18, and because we were upgrading from 14, okay, so we're going 14 to 18. Now I'm doing some development in 19. Because we had FileMaker, it was so easy to set up people remotely, and I mean, that's not the only part of it, but we were able to, because I'm working from home, I start work at 6:30 in the morning, because I don't have I don't have to 2 hour, I don't go through rush hour, I don't do anything, I just start working. And, you know, so, and it's easier to talk to the developers, you know, some of it, like there's a mix of what I develop in-house, a program called EC Pro, but we also, a few of you are familiar with KeyBiz, that's what we were, that's for our main operations. So it's been very good. I mean, we have our sales reps, now we're in the plumbing industry, so we were fortunate to still be considered essential. But what we found is a lot of our sales reps were not able to call on the customers because they wouldn't let them in, you know, understandably. And so they developed a sales rep portal. They expanded it. It uses PHP. So that's connected to FileMaker. So they're all doing it through a website. So they don't need to have a client. And a lot of them use iPads. I mean, years ago, I did create something on FileMaker Go, but now that it's on a website, PHP based, they can use, even some of them use their phones. And it doesn't matter whether they have Android or iPhone or, you know, or iOS, because they were stuck on iOS if it was FileMaker Go client. So it's just, we actually, because of COVID, we're able to, I think, did a better job on being completely ready. And Monday was such a success to so many people surprised how smooth our transition went. So there you go. That's my, so I'm happy.
I have a situation I could share too. I mentioned in my introduction that I'm unemployed, but that's only recent. It only happened in August. I was working for a company that's a graphic arts department. And in March, we were able to send everybody home to work from home. And what I developed was a daily dashboard, or a dashboard that gave everybody the list of work they needed to do for the day. Now management and supervisors could actually monitor what was getting accomplished, how many pages they were actually pushing through the graphic arts department because of the daily dashboard. And again, we had people going home to PCs, to Macs, to remote connectivity of different types. And suddenly FileMaker was a great solution for them to operate their dashboard. We also could track people's time through the dashboard. So unfortunately, I was let go from that company just because of company decisions and loss of revenue. But I was very, very proud of the project that I was able to pull off before they let me go. And I really do think it made a difference on how they could perform in COVID times. FileMaker's great.
I'm also retired. I'm a retired professor from CMU, and I still have various friends and family and former students in various higher education places. And well, if you follow in the papers, Penn State has been going back and forth, as have Pitt and maybe less so CMU. They go back and forth between how much is going to be online and how much is going to be in person. It just sounds like a nightmare to handle as a professor, because you're not only putting together an appropriate lecture and appropriate projects, homework, exams to do, you're also having to switch it periodically because you're not doing it in the mode you thought you would be. And as I listen to this, I hope this is being recorded. Is there any chance I could let any of my needy higher education friends listen to this? Or is it all proprietary, Thomas? I'm serious. I think a couple of them might be glad to do that. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah,
and
we're very happy to have the things we've built and done shared. Because of the way so much of our funding is federal funding, part of our mission is to make it available. So, and I'm very happy to work with others at developing FileMaker solutions.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and Jill, this meeting is going to be recorded. Once we get the video edited a little bit, it'll be available through the FMburgh YouTube channel. So if you wanted to share it with someone, you'd be able to do that too. I guess, I mean, I'm not an in-house developer, but I'll go ahead and jump in just to kind of echo what everybody else has been saying. Is just, you know, with FileMaker, because you can change and adapt so quickly that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, paper processes that we were brought in to eliminate. You know, the people are still filling out the same information, but instead of having to hand a piece of paper to 5 different people in an office, it's all electronic, so that, you know, nobody's having to touch that, you know, germy piece of paper that was out in the plant or whatever. So definitely, FileMaker allowed us to adapt things quickly.
Hey, Todd.
Yes, sir.
Since you're not an in-house developer, does that make you an out-house developer?
That's exactly what it would do, Paul. Thank you.
You know, I couldn't pass one up.
And especially that was a layup. I mean, you had to do something with that one.
Especially since they mentioned paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to again say that since you brought up the paper and the electronic, we had the structure behind because of this group and you all teaching me how to use FileMaker Advanced years ago. We already had the backbone with the container fields and everything, because we were in 2 different buildings and it was hard enough just to go down the street from one building to the other. We had people taking paperwork from one building to the other. So that's the solution that I created in-house, was so that they don't have to do that. So because we had that, I just built on to what we had, and having that already built in FileMaker made going remote even easier, because people were already used to doing that. They just needed more container fields or anything like that to continue to work remotely. So FileMaker has been a savior in our business, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just go along with the elimination of the paper thing. Our student teachers are required to fill out a state form, a PD 430, whenever they go out for student teaching. And with a lot of them either having to do virtual placements, or the supervisors aren't allowed in the buildings or whatever, they couldn't like meet face to face with their supervisors. So we use FileMaker to digitize the PD 430 and and then that way they can log in at the same time, they can review it at the same time, and then digitally sign it. We use some JavaScripting that you can do now in 19. They're able to sign it and then generate the PDFs of the state forms, and then we can log those and keep them archived digitally now. So yeah, it's really helping to force our hand into getting rid of some paper, but it's all a good thing.
In my corporation, FileMaker is not an approved development platform. We use SQL Server on the back end, and we interface with a lot of other big systems. I'm finding myself writing a lot of parsers, a lot of data transformation tools, because you got System A that doesn't speak the same language as System B, and they got to interact. And so we'll dump a file into a hot folder. I'll pick it up and put it in the right format, and then System B can use it from there. So that's I've been doing a lot of those lately.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add to the using FileMaker in the COVID-19 world before we move on? Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and move on to one more thing. If anybody has, comment, question they want to ask about anything FileMaker related, we can go ahead and do that now.
Does it have to be about FileMaker?
I guess it would be only if it's a joke coming from you, Paul, and then it has to be about FileMaker.
Well, I have a question for you, and then I have a thank you. Okay, the question is, are the security guards at Samsung called Guardians of the Galaxy? And then second thing is just a thanks. Thanks for teaching me the meaning of plethora. It really means a lot. Sorry.
No, thank you, Paul. We appreciate it. I think some of us, that's the only reason why we tune in each month. So.
I'm wondering if anybody upgraded to FileMaker 19.2 or whatever just came out recently, and has anybody tried that the new calendar thing they have or anything?
No, I have upgraded my desktop version, and the upgrade that I got through the Claris Resources downloads link, all it did was uninstall FileMaker Pro 19 from my computer, and then it just kind of hung. Luckily, I was able to get to a full installer of the 19.1.2. It ran without incident, and then when I went in to check all of my favorite hosts and all of like the custom settings were still there, so I didn't lose anything. I just don't know why it did what it did. But I haven't played around with any of the add-ons or anything like that yet. So has anybody played around with the add-ons?
There's a lot there that are available.
I think there's a few cool ones that I'd like to play with. It's just I got to get caught up on the regular jobs before I can play with stuff. So.
I'm just so excited to go from FileMaker 14 to FileMaker 19. It's just amazing. I'm like, oh, what else can I do?
I haven't played with any of the new add-ons, but I do want to give a plug out or a shout out to there's on the the marketplace of the add-on marketplace or whatever for FileMaker. That's where I found the I don't know how you say it, but it's Kyo or Kyo Logic e-signature add-on. That allows us to do the e-signatures on just using WebDirect. And it was so easy to implement, and those guys did a great job putting that together, add-on. So if anybody's looking for any way to capture signatures and WebDirect, I highly recommend that plugin. It's a really good.
Logic is here in Connecticut, and they get a double thumbs up from me.
Oh, okay.
First rate.
Yes, they have a great add-on. So very, very, very good things to say about it. Works great.
Anybody else have one more thing? Or I guess Thomas, Karen, or Christine, have you thought of the one more thing you wished you would have said but you forgot? So now's your chance. Okay, well, we can come back if anybody thinks of anything, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick. Just to wrap things up. We kind of already touched on this, but there you have, the 19.1.2 update is available now. It's got new features, the biggest one being the JavaScript enable add-ons. There's also a few bug fixes. They did point out that the reason why it went from 19.0 basically to 19.1.1 is that one wasn't released, and they just kind of rolled all of those changes all together. So you didn't miss anything. They just skipped it. And it probably has the most extensive release notes for an upgrade that I've seen in quite a while. So we'll make sure we include the link to the release notes when we send out our follow-up email if anybody wants to, check any of those things out. There's a new theme. There's some new functions. Again, the JavaScript add-ons and stuff like that you want to start digging into.
Todd, I do have an actual question about that. Is it my understanding this is the way Claris is going to work from now on, where as they get features done, they just release them and upgrade,
That's
smaller increments?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the 19.0 was the last annual release, and now everything is going to be on. I mean, they haven't come right out and said it, but it's going to be close to a quarterly release cycle, I think. Now, the only thing that it looks like, we got a FileMaker Pro update, but there hasn't been any update yet. So, FileMaker Server is still the 19.0 version. So that you may not always see them both together. Again, I think it probably depends on whether they find a bug that needs to be fixed or if they get a feature they need to add. So it may not always correspond. But yeah, that's that's why, and I think that's probably why the release notes were so extensive, is because you're actually getting new features where normally, the only time you'd get, an update with a new feature is because there was a new OS that they had to allow for or something. So public service announcement number 2. We mentioned this last time, just that, obviously they're all still out there. The Claris Engage on-demand sessions are continuing to be available. You can get to them through the Claris Academy. They're also up on YouTube. We'll have both of those links in our follow-up email that'll come out either tomorrow or Friday. Just a shout out to our own Laura Betts, who actually has one of those on-demand sessions. So way to go, Laura.
And Bobby.
Oh, and Bobby.
Yes.
So you guys can check those out if you like. There is a Slack channel that we've started. We're also on LinkedIn because they're members only groups. If you want to be let in, just contact Laura and she can get you set up for that. Well, here's our survey results from last month, as we asked how often do you use JSON in your FileMaker solution, since both Beth and I had talked about the data API and parsing JSON. So this is what the various responses that came back. So we've got, we also asked what method you use to learn and improve your FileMaker development skills. So all the choices that we gave at least had a few choices. The majority, exchanging ideas with a mentor, the community forum, webinars. Thanks to everybody that voted up FMburgh, appreciate that. And then almost everyone attends the Claris Engage conference, and whether it's annual or on some kind of schedule. So, and then the last question we asked was, what are your, this time of year being fall, what are the activities that you enjoy? So we only had a small percentage that like getting lost in a corn maze. And most everybody said they like to watch the leaf turn color, and then everything else was somewhere in between. So, some important dates. The next meeting will be November 4th, that first Wednesday of November, same time, and probably same back channel as well, since we're still going to be online. The Claris Engage conference is coming up here in September for 2021. However, there's been some conflicts with those dates, and Claris is trying to do what they can to work around the conflict with Yom Kippur because of when the conference ends and things like that. So those are the dates as they are right now, but that's could adjust, back and forth a little bit. But you get to go to sunny San Diego, so it's a very nice venue for the conference. And then the last important date is that season 2 of The Mandalorian arrives on Disney Plus on October 30th, not the 20th. I had a typo. So sorry, it's the 30th. So you got to wait 10 more days than what it says here. And this is the way. Okay, as of this point, our next meeting, not sure what we're going to be talking about or who's going to be doing the talking, but we'll be here and we'd like to see you all back.